He was only 10 years old when Jacob Dalton proudly exclaimed to his mother how he knew what he wanted to be when he grew up. Kathy listened as her son beamed and practically screamed that he wanted to be part of the U.S. military. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like and share this video with your friends. The boy's fierce determination and ambition was remarkable, but little did Kathy know that this childhood dream would turn into a reality and would end up changing statewide laws, all because of her son. Jacob Dalton Stanley grew up in Crown Point, Indiana, and was always laser-focused. He knew exactly what he wanted from life, to become a sergeant one day. He was a student at Crown Point High School and worked diligently to keep up his grades to make sure his dream would turn into a reality. His father was also a veteran, and no one had nudged Jacob to follow in his footsteps. The young teen had come to this conclusion himself. And after years of waiting, it was time to officially enlist in the Marines. Jacob's tunnel vision for his dreams had meant that he missed many of his high school milestones in preparation for his lifelong goal. But one thing he knew he had to make time for was his high school graduation. And despite being away attending military boot camp, the 18-year-old flew back home to Indiana to get his diploma in person and give his friends and family at home to properly say goodbye to him before he deployed. Jacob's mom, Kathy, had tears in her eyes as she first saw her son in his Marine Corps uniform. To her, it seemed like it was only yesterday when Jacob was just 10 and had proclaimed his desire to join the U.S. military, and now he had done it. The young man's girlfriend, Shannon, was also there to welcome him back for his high school graduation. And as family and friends prepared for the ceremony, they had no idea what was about to come. Everywhere he went in his uniform, he was met with salutes and congratulation. The small-town community had known about Jacob's dream from the start, and seeing him in the uniform was proof that he had achieved that. Jacob himself knew at that point, surrounded by his friends and family, that he had made the right decision, and all the hard work had paid off. Now, all he needed to do was get his diploma handed to him and everything would have been golden. Except, of course, nothing really went as planned. You see, earlier in the day during the graduation ceremony rehearsal, Jacob had asked his principal, Chip Pettit, if he could wear his military uniform at the ceremony. And what should have been a definite yes was met with a whole speech about rules and regulations and a general dismissive tone. The teenager said that he understood Mr. Pettit's reasoning, but explained his own point of view, but the principal was having none of it. But despite the rude conversation he had earlier in the morning with the principal, Jacob still had optimistic outlook and decided to wear his uniform anyways. Most of the teenagers graduating were technically not following all the rules and regulations, so the young military man thought that no one would mind. And he was right. Things were going pretty smoothly. All his teachers were overjoyed seeing Jacob in his uniform and gladly took pictures with him, and of course, none of the student body minded. The ceremony began, and finally, it came time for Jacob to head out and get his diploma. He was beaming, ready to finish the last milestone in his dream before leaving his hometown for good. But Mr. Pettit had other plans. He skipped Dalton's name entirely. Without skipping a beat, the principal moved on to his next classmate on the list, pretending as if the young military man wasn't even there. Jacob's confused friends and family who were crowded on the bleachers were just as confused as him. What was happening? Why hadn't they announced Jacob's name? Dalton had always been a good student, so it couldn't have been because he didn't meet all the requirements. At that point, no one could have guessed that it was Dalton's innocent desire to wear his military uniform which had gotten him humiliated in such a public manner by the school's principal. And what was worst was that Mr. Pettit's found the confused and hurt Jacob with his eyes and smugly shot him a look. As soon as the ceremony ended, Kathy found Mr. Pettit and demanded an explanation for committing her son's name. He reiterated that Dalton was breaking the school's rules by wearing his military uniform, but Kathy was having none of it. She asked the principal to look around and pointed at several other teenagers wearing prohibited items such as flip-flops, gym shorts, and hats. All of their names had been called. "It was a disgrace," Kathy later said in an interview. There was one student who wore shorts and gym shoes and another student who wore a red turban symbolizing his religious views. And apart from the principal asking Dalton to not wear his uniform, there actually weren't any written rules specifically disallowing military uniforms at graduation ceremonies, while flip-flops and religious symbols were strictly banned. To Kathy, it seemed that her son had been singled out and excluded. She would have understood if all the other students breaking the dress code had also been similarly treated, but they hadn't. And what was worst was that the uniform represented Jacob's sacrifice to his country, his determination to protect and serve. Why would anyone want to stop a student from representing his love for his own country and military? The situation was absolutely ridiculous, said Leanne Tustison, a peer of Jacob's. He's in the military putting his life on the line for us. It's unacceptable that he was not allowed to walk across the stage. The students were outraged, she added. There were some students who were going to walk in solidarity with Jake. Another student decided to post about the story online, and after that the issue went national. Crystal Hernandez took to Facebook and said, "It amazes me that all through life people are always telling you to be proud that you're different, celebrate your uniqueness. Yet at one of the most memorable events in your life, an administrator makes the decision to completely destroy your accomplishments." She wrote, "Shame on you, CPHS and Chip Pettit." Another user wrote, "I sent Mr. Pettit a letter today. I know of people who are pulling all financial support of CPHS and their programs over this. If that were my son, I would have escorted him across the stage." With all the backlash against his decision, everyone accepted Mr. Pettit to officially apologize to Jacob. Instead, he argued that he had already warned the young man specially to not wear his uniform, which he disobeyed, and those were the repercussions. He tried to explain himself in an interview with NBC Chicago. This tradition is not intended to be disrespectful to students, parents, or our community, but as a source of pride for our students. The news soon created a national debate on military uniforms, and State Representative Mike Aylesworth was especially infuriated by what had happened. "What happened I found not appropriate," Mike, a Vietnam-era veteran, said. "I just think people who are willing to put themselves in harm's way should have the option to wear a uniform at graduation." Inspired by Jacob Dalton, the state rep actually did something no one expected him to do. Mike Aylesworth won committee approval for a life-changing bill mandating that school districts finally allow students serving in the military to wear their dress uniform instead of the traditional graduation apparel. "It's a hodgepodge of local school board regulations all over the state," Mike said. "I just want to make it consistent all over the state." He continued, "Most school corporations in the state do the right thing and don't need a law for guidance, but there's evidently a couple of school corporations that need help. We should be encouraging young people who want to put their life on the line for our country to go through graduation and walk upon the stage in their uniform," Mike added. Jacob's family were ever so grateful for this monumental change. Wheeler Stanley, Jacob's father, said that he fully supported this legislation and hoped that this gets enforced across the state. "I would support it wholeheartedly," he said, "but what did Jacob think? I don't want the social media controversy that is drawing attention away from the class of 2017, he said in an interview. "I also do not want to make any additional statements and wish to put this all behind me so I can start my career in the Marine Corps." Jacob decided to rise above the whole issue and move on, another reflection of his strong character and value system. Mr. Pettit is still the principal of Crown Point High School and has not commented on the new bill being passed.